So the next thing we should talk about are types of linear rails. What are the types of linear rails? You got something like this that holds a round rod in it. This is pretty much an unprotected round rod, and then it'll have two radiuses on a wheel that go this way and that way with two wheels, maybe four wheels, two on cams to be able to set the preload and that adjust the rigidity. That's pretty smooth motion, not good for unprotected applications. And then you have linear rail, profile linear rail like this, that will have a couple rows of balls or needles that will move radially along these ground planes here. And this is the most rigid type of linear rail. So why doesn't everybody build with this style of linear rail? It's the most rigid. It's got the lightest preload, the most rigidity. It's the most accurate. It's the most repeatable. It's also the most expensive and the most hard. It's the toughest to integrate. So when you talk about linear rail, profile linear rail like this, where it has an actual radial profile that's ground into it, is going to be your smoothest rail. So there's the profile. It's on the top and bottom on either side. When we start getting into V wheels are kind of neat. They're novel. They're smooth for the most part, but they rely on a single or double ball bearing row bearing. And V wheels like this, are pretty good for applications where you don't need a lot of accuracy. And what they'll do is they'll have four of them on a plate like this, and they'll have two of them on cams to be able to get their preload and rigidity out of them. V wheels can have their place, but they generally don't last a long time. They're cheap to replace, and then unprotected. The theory is that the V pushes the material out of the way, but the reality is that the V, because of its radial design, will actually have a wear characteristic planar from the center of the radial design and down to the rail. So you'll always be riding on two very small points of contact. I mean, that is just simply how a V wheel. So then the other kind of alternative is the round rail. And the round rail is pretty good. It's great when it's in its closed form. It self-cleans itself. But it's never really meant for side loading. So whenever you see this in any kind of movement applications, they'll need to have a pair of them moving. Now round rod is novel, but really the rigidity you're going to get out of the true profile linear rail is superior to round rod rail. So there really isn't a good application for round rod rail in most forms. It's just kind of a cheap linear rail. The other one is the Speed Demon type rail that will have embedded into it a couple of hardened chrome rods in an aluminum extrusion with a series of wheels. Now this is pretty good. There's some Chinese copies of it. There's some original Korean ones that we use on some of our machines. That's a great a way to get smooth motion. And a lot of the smaller formats are found in motion camera industry, where you're filming a $300,000 shot. You can't have a bump in motion of the camera as it moves along. So there we see like a 5-wheel, and that's the Chinese import style of it. But that's been a pretty good rail for us, a really great rail for our customers, and we integrate that rail. So we have these different types of rails and ideas. And sometimes we even get folks that'll run like a plastic wheel or a steel wheel on extruded aluminum, and that can get you by for a while. It's a cheap way of motion, but really the industrial solution to motion is the profile linear rail. It can be bought under many different names. A lot of them will have different profiles. Some will have the high load profiles like this. Some will be needle. Some will be a ball bearing. But linear rails really should be used in an industrial application. V wheels are neat. They're cheap. They're really cheap to integrate. They're easy to integrate. They don't require any surface machining like linear rails do. They don't require a whole lot of qualifying. A V wheel can run on a single point, doesn't need a double point, still going to be just about as smooth until it rocks. But V wheels in general are your garage method of building a machine, and I would personally highly recommend a profile linear rail whenever possible.